All right.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Let's just jump right in. So, no real format here. It's pretty free form. I threw some ideas out there, and I see that folks have put stuff in. Does anybody want to jump in with a topic, start talking about? I don't want to be running the show and driving this. I'd rather have everybody kind of jump in and contribute what they want to talk about, and I'll be happy to take notes and contribute as well. But does anybody have any topics they want to start with? Everybody at once.
I could read my points and maybe comment slightly on them.
Right.
Yeah, I stole Camille's format because it was amazing. Yeah. So basically, the greatest points for me about our team is that domain is really awesome and unusual for, typical Ruby Rails projects, and that's a lot to learn, even if it could be hard sometimes. And this is amazing. And of course, huge shout out to Camille for doing tremendous amount of work for us. I don't really understand how he was able to do deck and all this stuff outside the team domain. Yeah, so the question to Camille, any suggestions how we could interact with you better? Maybe in case if you'll be overpinging you sometimes, so maybe you want better format. To have less interruptions to your work. Okay. Great. Yeah, so the bad point, sometimes it's not easy to find good sources of truth in the web, because of course we could ask Camille about that, but it's not enough sometimes. And I have maybe a proposal, but something like this. Do you feel like it's a good idea to post articles I find useful to some channel? Maybe to not clutter our channel, we could create a special channel like links, if you feel it could be useful. Because I find a lot of articles I find kind of semi-useful, and they're not ready enough to post them to documentation, because to post something to documentation, we need to understand it will be useful for everyone. But we could use this channel and check if it would be alive for some time or not, like the social one. Okay, so
how about we create an issue in the memory team that we would post all the links? Because it seems to be like me to be more ephemeral, but if we have this issue, then maybe every month we could go to this issue and see what was interesting, and we translate that into documentation.
Yes, I see. This could be useful. I will post the links I have today because I have a list already. Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, so also this point about 10 merge requests a month, I participated in a number of company meetings, and I feel like it's very important metric to the company because Sid talks a lot about it. And I feel like we have a problem achieving it, maybe with our domain, maybe with me being inexperienced yet, but how to address it, how to feel about it? What's your opinion? Is it something that we are not going to achieve in the future, or are we going to, I don't know, because there are a lot of issues that you need to investigate. And for me, it's not an easy, at least for now. And sometimes I could not even make a single commit a day, which is contradicts with company values of pushing something to Git every day. So yeah, and that's prevents me from feeling if I'm ready to participate in interviewing preparation, or this kind of valuable metric, I feel, at least how the company talks about it.
I have opinions, but I'd like to hear others before I jump in here.
So Alexei, my proposal is really try to hack the system. So the work that you would do in 2 bigger issues, like 2 bigger MRs, like then do them in the smaller ones. Because like I think that like at least it seems like with the import-export, like we could ship like this one bigger change that would have all of that. But technically, like if we would go further, we could split it probably in 2 more MRs. It kind of inflates the metric, but actually it's from the different angle, it's actually better of the quality because it's easier to review by maintainer then, and it should be faster to merge. So like right now, like we work with the Genio, we started with a single MR, like for the memory killer, but it's turned out that like we're gonna have at least 3 different MRs that we're gonna merge, because it's like this split seems like reasonable that we could divide that into smaller pieces that should be faster to merge. So my proposal is like try to think very hard on how to ship smaller MRs, because like I know that like the idea like in general like it's easier to do a bigger piece because it's like more complete, but from my perspective it's easier to review the smaller piece. So if it takes like that one issue you're gonna close in 5 MRs, it's actually great because like you can divide the changes in some kind of functional or like self-sufficient parts, because like it's not that like we should divide by like specs in this MR and changes to the application in this MR, but rather like if you're adding some, I don't know, refactor or like some like reordering or like some improvements to specs that like change the existing specs to align them to what you're working on, it actually can go into separate MR. It's like it's technical debt that you are solving. Very often, like we solve this technical debt as part of like bigger piece, but nothing really prevents us from like doing this technical debt earlier and like really assigning that to the random people, and there are gonna be a ton of people that are gonna merge that for you like in 1 day or even faster. So split as possible. I mean, as much as possible that makes it still like self-sufficient and functional, not naively.
Okay, thanks for that. And yeah, Craig, you wanted to add something?
Sure. I agree with everybody's feedback that it's going to be difficult to hit that 10 MR average, especially for this team, right? If this was, and this is what I tell other managers and other folks that have been in on the metrics working group that I've been in on, the memory team is just, it's a different team, right? We're going to get problems sent to us that are ill-defined and require a lot of research, and it's going to take some time to even get a good issue out there that's something more than we use too much memory on Sidekick. So yes, I think our team is going to be kind of all over the place on our MR metrics, and at the end of the quarter, if we come back and we didn't hit our 10 MRs, but we have a good cadence or a good pace, and we have adopted, like Camille said, adopted a pattern of trying to break down issues even smaller and submit multiple MRs per issue, then that's not a bad thing, even if we miss the goal. If we know what our velocity is, if we know what our throughput is, and we know how we want to work together as a team, the fact that we don't hit the company-wide 10 MR average isn't a terrible thing, especially given the charter of this team. Now, if we were a feature team and we were given well-manicured issues, milestone over milestone, that are fairly well broken down in shipping an MVC per issue, then I think we'd be in a different spot and we should be able to hit a higher MR throughput per month. But again, given the charter of the memory team to go research, debug, and come up with solutions for difficult problems, I think we're going to be all over the place. And this goal was thrown out there. It's a company-wide goal. We should do our best to see what our average is, and then we report back on that OKR, and we adjust the OKR if we need to. It's not set in stone. It was a goal that we put out there, and if it's not reasonable for our team, then we will adjust accordingly.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, that's basically all from me. I'm just glad the team is growing. We have Nelia and Larissa and new member who will be joining us soon. So This is great. 3 members. Wow.
We might, yeah. So
Awesome.
since this is recorded, I'm not going to mention any names, but
Of course.
we had some headcount shuffling because of the search team. We had to move one of our headcount to Q4, but then we got lucky in that we identified 3 people that we wanted to hire totally. So the one who's starting in October, that's a done deal. We are going on reference checks on another one, and that should hopefully that'll finish up this week. And that's an external hire. The internal hire, the offer is out there. We just need to adjust the start date because there were some things that we had to work through real quickly. But the internal hire should be on the team within a week, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So I'm hoping by the end of the week we have the team, we have at least names in all the slots and starting dates for everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all from me. So feel free to continue. Somebody else.
Anything you want to talk about, Camilo?
How we go through the list of all bad things and what we could improve and discuss these items.
Sure.
Could you create go through from the top to the bottom?
So I put in categories that I called out earlier in their own comments, kind of like the retro style, just so we could talk about them. You called out Puma and interruptions again. So let's talk about interruptions.
Yes, and this is tricky because I don't really know how to improve that. It seems to be at least for me very interruption driven, what we do. I wish it would be more structured. So I know that this is amount of time that I can spend on this is amount of time that I can spend on this, because otherwise it feels like that I am kind of rushing or getting things done, and also feeling that there are some things from back of my head that I should answer or try to see what is the status, but I just don't have time for that. I wonder how to better organize our work to not overshoot what we are aiming for, because at least for Puma, we seem to have everything. We have all the pieces. There are some unexpectancies with the chronic duration that we're gonna solve this week. It's fairly easy, but we kind of, I think, miss this dot on I to kind of conclude that and be done with that, and it kind of goes over and over for next milestone pretty much. I wonder I mean it's not really the only Puma case, but rather we have so many interruptions that it delays what we planned and makes us reshuffle a lot of milestone through the milestone. I think that's probably one third of the issues that we had assigned to this milestone was kind of reshuffled to the future milestone, because they were underplanned or we were over planning ourselves and things like that. And it's kind of open topic, but I have really trouble on how to deal with that.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know that this team will ever get away from some level of interrupt driven. Typically, how I've dealt with this in the past is if you have a fairly well-defined roadmap for at least a couple sprints, or in this case, at least a milestone or 2 out, then you can start talking about trade-offs, right? If an interrupt comes into the team, says, hey, this is super high priority, then you talk to product or whomever the stakeholder is and say, well, I understand it's a priority, but here are the things that we're working on right now, and it will delay those. And in the case of the project import, export, and other interruptions that happened this month, those were were emergencies. Those were things that we need to alleviate pretty quickly because we were having some production issues that just wouldn't allow us to scale, right? Andrew and Stan and others were in daily firefighting mode, and we needed to jump on those. Sidekick Memory Killer was a big one for them. So I don't know that we'll ever get away from being at least partially interrupt driven, just given the charter of the team. But I think improved planning and having more detail around our issues and roadmap will probably help us to at least make good decisions when we have to make those interruptions.
I'm just wondering if it's gonna change when we have more people, because technically we should have 2 or 3 more people joining the team, so we will basically effectively double engineering capacity of the team. But we need actually, I hope so that we're gonna probably have the capacity to work on what is our plan and have the capacity what is interrupt driven. Maybe this is actually the solution. We are so small right now that these interruptions, they are significantly sized that basically it's like half of the team capacity pretty much. But maybe, but then maybe that there gonna be another case, we're gonna be way bigger. So actually we're gonna have more demand on our interruptions because we're gonna be more flexible. So technically we're still gonna be spending 50% of the time, but maybe there are gonna be 2 people in the team that are gonna have stable assignment where other part of the team gonna struggle on getting their kind of interruption driven work done. I don't know. It's tricky.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse to get more team members, right? People are excited about the work that this team is doing and the productivity and the problems we're solving. And when they see that we double our team, they're just going to start throwing more problems at us, right? That we're going to have to go tackle, which it's a good thing. They have confidence in us and our ability to deliver. There are things that we can explore as we get more folks on the team. One thing that I've done in the past with other teams is just have someone that's on triage rotation for a week or a sprint or even a milestone, which I think might end up being a bit tedious, but have someone kind of be that front line once they're in seat for at least 3 months and kind of have figured out their way around the company to be able to review incoming priority issues, ask some pertinent questions, figure out where do we need to look, is this important enough that we need to do now? And part of that's my job, to be honest with you, but have an engineer just kind of do triage and catch the late breaking issues that come over to the team. Any other thoughts? Yeah, I think this will get better as we grow as a team, but I also think interruptions will be a constant state for this team and the things that we work.
Just one thought. I feel like the border between memory team and metrics team is quite thin. Is this fine? Because, for example, the recent ticket with metrics, it's hard to say if it's our team first should investigate it or metrics team, or just metrics team is overloaded and we need to do that. Or is it assigned to our team because we were the last ones who made the change to this unicorn metrics? Yeah.
Do we have a metrics?
Yeah, we had this. Yeah, we have. Yeah, I'm just wondering, so do we need to investigate metrics as well? Is it our domain? I mean, metrics related to Unicorn, Puma, and something like this. Just an example of the tickets that appeared somewhere in the middle, and it's probably related to our work, but I'm wondering who should first take the ball to investigate it.
Yeah, I don't think we own all metrics, right? I think if we are given an issue where a problem has arisen, then yes, we're going to have to build in metrics to validate our assumptions on what we're working on, but we don't own metrics for all of the platform. That should be, if it's just a request for building metrics, we should push it back to the feature team that built the feature. All right. So let's see. What are the bad things we can talk about?
There is not really a lot of bad things. That's the truth.
Yeah, I think interruptions was a big thing. Let's talk about waiting. It's come up by a few folks. So I've gotten mixed feedback on this one from folks. Mostly, the concept of waiting is great. How we executed the first time when we asked everybody to go through all of the issues, some folks thought that was a waste of time. So in some cases, right, because there are issues that we've waited that we still haven't even touched yet, haven't started. And folks felt like having the whole team look at every issue and weighting them all as we pre-assign them to the milestone was a bit of a waste of time. And we talked briefly about waiting as we picked up issues, which kind of falls into the next topic of assignments. So any thoughts on how we can improve the way we do waiting? I agree with Camille. I think it's important we continue to do this.
So I think that waiting in that form will not scale with amount of the issues that we're gonna have. But at least for now, I think that we should continue to build like the understanding between every person what we are working on, and also push us to refine the issues and the scope of work better, because one deficiency that I see with our issues, they are quite ambiguous. And then in the mid of the cycle, we learn that we don't really know what to do with them, where it should be basically, ideally, it should be done before we even assign it to the milestone or like approve that. So I think that at the scale right now, we can still continue doing that, but as long as we have 2 or 3 times more issues, it will not be possible. But then like we should have much better understanding of how to triage these issues, on like what is our scope. So technically then we could like kind of divide our attention to some specific areas when there is more people and more issues. And I think it's also kind of important from the weighting system is to not only like refine what is to be worked on, but also have the same shared understanding of the issue. So kind of share the pool of meaning. And also, I think understand between us how we differently weight the work to actually to know, because like in ideal world, the weights should be pretty much similar from all of us. So basically we understand the same scope of the work to be done the same way, and like we have the same capacity to do of them. But maybe some of you, like when we start looking at that, notice something that was like not originally intended, that it turns out that this is something more complex that was mentioned. So I think like having the weight system allow us to have the shared understanding, and ideally it should allow us to understand the complexity also as well better.
Yep, agree. So waiting's super important. Looking for ways that we can execute on it better throughout there. Maybe we identify issues that need waits during the Monday staff meetings. And that shouldn't be the only place, right? We can do it asynchronously too, call out on the issues. Hey, I'm picking up this issue. If we go with waiting as we pick them up rather than when we assign them or at the beginning of a milestone. bring it up so we can discuss, especially if we have some major discrepancies, or just call out, hey, I need some feedback on the weight of this issue during the Monday meetings if we don't get it asynchronously. Anybody else have any thoughts on how we can do weighting going forward? So other teams have the managers do weighting, and I'm not going to do that because I'm not actually the one working on the issues. I think it's up to the engineers to do the weighting.
Let's continue doing that and then reflect on how it's going in the next cycle.
Okay, and that kind of falls into assignments. So the past couple of milestones, I've kind of bucketed work and assigned them to folks, and the feedback I've gotten on that is it's good to know what I'm working on next, or it's good to have some other issues assigned to me so that if I get blocked on one, then I can go focus on something else to work on. But then because we are so interrupt driven, often, within a week of the milestone start, we can have a bunch of new issues that people need to be assigned, and then it clutters the board because they see they have 10 different things assigned to them. So I think probably the compromise here is starting a milestone, knowing one or two issues are assigned to you, and then have the rest of them listed in priority order on the milestone board, so that if you finish up the work that was assigned to you at the beginning of the milestone, you can pick up something next. Then as you pick things up, we can add weights and talk about the weights of the issue and ask for feedback from folks about your thoughts on weighting. So it looks like Camille is saying something similar, 50% pre-assignment, 50% free for interruptions. All right. We'll go with that for next milestone, which is coming up a couple weeks here. And often milestones will start with carryover from previous milestone anyway, so there shouldn't be any surprises on what gets assigned as the new milestone kicks off. Are there any other thumbs down topics that folks want to talk about?
Yeah, I had a small one. I think it's probably more just a consequence of I'm seeing the same with performance as well, in that before it wasn't really a dedicated team, so it's just kind of a nascent effort. And when that happens, I think we find a lot of old issues that don't really apply anymore, or being duplicated in certain ways, or being superseded. And I just thought I saw a parallel there between performance and memory. It's just that, like, yesterday we found that that issue doesn't really apply. And obviously that inflates boards and people's lists. And I just want to call that out and just, maybe sometimes, and the same like has to happen performance, where sometimes you need to have a quick kind of culling of issues just to go through them and go, oh, actually that one's now superseded, or that one's now just completely irrelevant. We've done that essentially in a different issue, etc. So that's one of the small bad ones I want to call out.
Yeah, and increased participation from product management will help here. And I will certainly help with removing redundant issues whenever I find them. So Larissa is our new product manager, right? And she's been asked, and I was okay with her focusing most of her time on distribution right now. She is shared with distribution as well, and they had a much higher priority need in filling out their backlog and focus from product management than we did. We had a pretty good idea of what we were working on for the next month or two as she joined. But as we get more team members and as we start to burn down the known issues that we should be working on, Larissa will start ramping up. And I have now weekly meetings with her to start talking about what are we working on now? What do we need to work on in the future? And I think that will help to have more product management oversight with the memory team.
Sounds like a good next step. Yeah, that sounds like that'll work. I'd say it's definitely because the teams didn't really exist mere months ago. So it's just like different parts of the company were raising issues that were similar. So makes sense.
Yeah, and similar issues can come up from different areas of the product too, right? They could ultimately have the same root. So I think it'll be an ongoing issue that we just need to continue to be aware of and close out and say duplicate and link it to the other issue. All right, what's awesome about the memory team? There's a lot.
I have some quick questions, I think.
All right, go ahead, Chinyu.
Yeah, so most of my points have been covered, but I have some additional several questions here. So the quick question is about the 10 merge requests per month. Will that company will consider how long the team member will stay in the company?
Yeah, well, I don't know about other managers and teams, but I certainly do. And people are certainly aware that the memory team is new and that there will be inconsistency at the beginning of the team, in the beginning of the individual's tenure, before we see a plateau. And I was on the metrics working group where we actually graphed that out too, right? We took all of the MRs, we graphed them out per author, per tenure, and we certainly saw a ramp up, especially on tenure of folks that have joined. And it depended on where they came into, whether it was intermediate, senior, or whatever level they came in. We were looking for a ramp up over 3 to 6 month time. So yes, for sure.
Okay. Another question I said is balance between the better solution and quick delivery. I think of this because I had remembered there's an issue from some production issue that we have been asked to do something. That was the merge request, the Camille, actually Camille delivered that after he came back from vacation. I remember in that issue, the issue author actually has the initial proposal. If we just simply follow that proposal, we can quickly deliver something. But it actually, at least I feel that proposal doesn't sound like a very promising solution because it requires a lot of change in every individual worker. So that the reality is it involves several daily discussions from many different people, and then finally Camille gave a better solution, and he also write code to implement that. So here, sometimes we have to balance, because if we were to reach the throughput goal, will that impact sometimes we choose a better solution? If we don't discuss more, we just implement and submit for review and merge, maybe that issue is closed.
Anybody have any thoughts here?
Well, my opinion is that we definitely have this goal in GitLab, in handbooks, that we need to deliver fast and iterate fast and ship smaller solution, which is great. But sometimes I feel like we need to be aware of compromise, especially based on our team's nature, because some of our tasks actually make some solutions better. So we could not just, I guess this balance is more visible for product teams. So they need to ship a feature, iterate on the feature, and deliver improvement based on clients' feedback. We are working in a bit different domain. It's not always features. Sometimes it's already improvements of like our service behavior. This means better solution already to start with. So that's why I believe we have this not easy dichotomy between these two sides. I mean, we just need to judge based on each issue. That's how I feel about my decisions on whether to make this code better or like ask Camille to review faster.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good, because from that issue, I personally feel it's worth to do a better solution. Otherwise, from the whole company's perspective, in future, it will actually take longer time and extra effort to deliver something meaningful. But from the merge request perspective, the throughput looks less.
So I can retrospect about this issue that like you are mentioning. The original proposal it was not better solution. It was not even quick solution because it was hard solution to add. So it didn't actually like fulfill any of the goals of being quick or better. It was only harder to ship with a lot of downsides included. And at least for this issue, I don't know. It's maybe more about like the domain knowledge that should climb after time. What it's like the easier solution to do. But if I would have to balance in context of the memory team, whether this is quick or better solution, I would rather balance on the better solution, because the last thing that I would make us to do is go back to fixing like the problems that we introduced. So at least for me, it's like we should be clever on like choosing better solution, even if it takes a little longer. So kind of like we should iterate fast, but this iterating fast maybe should be like that we know ahead of the time the direction on which we should like improve the application, and we just basically build up a mind map of the potential improvements, and we just kind of work on the better solutions on many of these directions. Kind of like you see that like example that we started with import export, like we cannot ship all of them at once. We could maybe ship the quick solutions, like maybe what Stan was originally proposing, but is it actually better? Yes, like it improves a little, but it actually introduces a ton of technical depth. And I think that our goal from the memory team should be that we do not fix immediate problems, but rather like we improve things systematically. I mean, like overall architecture. So like if with the import export, it was kind of like, with the export, it was kind of like small refactoring of the space to make it easier to deal with later. So like I know that the next person that comes after me it will make it easier for that person to contribute to this code base, because like if you add a bunch of quick hacks to fix some of these problems, it's kind of nightmare for all the new people joining like the company and the team, because they're gonna be struggling even more with understanding like the interconnections between all the pieces, where GitLab is already, as you can see, fairly difficult to deal with and improve, because it's so interconnected internally. So at least from my perspective, we should aim for better solutions, but to achieve the higher throughput, we should kind of know ahead of the plan the direction that we are aiming, like the scope. We want to improve import export generally. And once we work on some of these items, building this better solution, we kind of should build also the additional ideas how to improve that space, create an issues, as many of them that would, I don't know, target some specific improvements that we see out of this code. And technically, we're gonna struggle with the throughput at the beginning, because better solution takes longer time to execute, but over time, our throughput gonna be fine, because we're gonna be shipping more of the better quality, and we're gonna actually spend less time on the like retroactively bug fixing changes that were like misdesigned. But there is also another tangent. We should not over-engineer, and because if we over-engineer, it kind of becomes even worse, because we are optimizing for something that is not true. So I know that this is a ton of conflicting goals, but it's like memory team is like in this very tricky spot. I know that in the handbook there is written like boring solutions, but the last thing that we should do is like the boring of the most boring solutions. We should pick the boring solutions that are just better solutions architecturally overall, and it makes every new person joining the team and the company easier to deal with. Kind of maybe sacrificing throughput at the beginning, but as long as you kind of understand the domain, knowledge about that space, and you understand how maybe like what is the best way to refactor some of the parts, then kind of throughput should also arrive at some point. It may just take a little longer at the beginning because it's actually like it requires a lot more work upfront to understand what to do.
Yeah, great overview, Camille. Thanks.
I think the other thing we can look at here, I agree with Camille, the long term, we should always be looking for the better solution. But I think as you get into these issues that may seem like big issues, like improve project import export, right? I think we actually had an issue that just said that. Always look for the low hanging fruit, right? So if we can find some low hanging fruit, it will help with understanding, especially if it's a new area, like project import and export is a new area for folks. If there are some quick fixes that we can find that will help, and actually asking questions about low-hanging fruit will help you to better understand the goal, because a goal of improving project import and export is not really an executable goal. Reducing the memory footprint of an import, that's something we can actually be a little more focused on. The overall architecture for, again, overusing the import-export example, we have some long-term goals of like using new line delimited JSON, but the things that Camille found about deduplicating, that was huge. And that's going to provide a lot of overhead for folks, especially in infrastructure, and not have to continue to manually support and watch import and export. I think the Sidekick memory killer is another good option where, as we got into it, people kept throwing new features on, like, oh, it'd be great if we had an bin tool for it, and it'd be great if we could do this. Identify the low-hanging fruit, break it out as either an individual MR, or break it out as an issue, saying this is the initial goal, this is the low-hanging fruit that we're going to work on while we work towards the bigger goal. And perhaps some of the low-hanging fruit is good enough that we can deprioritize that and work on something else for a while. So that would be my advice. Look for the low-hanging fruit first. All right. And then other question about community contributor, Jinyu?
That one is a pure question because there is one community contributor. I'm not sure. Because we have higher priority tasks on our hand, but I'm not sure what's the balance between them. I'm not sure whether if we don't respond to them much faster, does that sounds it will impact the community's passion to work with GitLab. So that's.
1 second. Let me look something up here. Okay. Anybody see this? So the question was asked by another manager, like, how do we prioritize community contributions? And I missed the meeting where they talked about this, but Eric Johnson, VP of Engineering, gave some feedback. I will link to the doc here so y'all don't have to struggle to read it while we're talking through this. Did you all know we had VP office hours, VP of Engineering office hours?
Yes, I've heard about them, but I didn't join them.
Yeah, they're not in hours conducive to your time zone. I think they're most. Eric tries to move them around so that they're not always U.S. time zone, but often they are. So there's no good answer, is what I'm trying to say, Chin Yu. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, we have about 13 minutes of the allotted scheduled time. I'm happy to go over if there are other topics folks want to talk about. Any other issues we want to cover? Or any other topics to talk about? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I will call it. And feel free to add more. Thanks for all the great feedback. This was very useful. Thanks, Alexi, for suggesting we do this. I think it was good. We'll have to schedule another one in the future. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you online.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Yeah.